Oh, did we start yet? I don't know the snap count. Sorry, I pulled a Tunsil.
Yeah, you're good. Good job.
Pulled a Tunsil.
You got that one out. Is this as bad as it gets? It is S&L Reaction Monday, trying to make sense of the Texans' worst loss of the DeMeco Ryans, CJ Stroud era. Is this as bad as it gets? That's the question that I want to ask. Are some of these issues going to linger around? But I think, to balance out what happened and what can happen, is this as bad as it gets for the Houston Texans, DeMeco Ryans, CJ Stroud?
The scary part, Landry, is no, this isn't as bad as it could get. I have faith that this is as bad as it's going to be. So I don't want to sit on the fence here. This is as bad as it will be if you believe in DeMeco Ryans, CJ Stroud, and company to turn all this around. It can get so much worse. But this is as bad as it's going to be. Like, I believe DeMeco Ryans is going to have a really tough week of practice with these guys. They're going to focus in. They're going to dial in. A lot of the mistakes that can get cleaned up that aren't a talent issue, that aren't a just physically can't do it issue, those things will get cleaned up. They'll be ready for Jacksonville on Sunday. The scary part is if we look back in 3, 6, 9 weeks and we find out that some of these issues that were glaring in Minnesota that just jumped off the page as, oh crap, if they don't get this fixed, it's a huge issue. The scary part is 2-3 months from now, we're looking back at Minnesota. It was like, yep, we should have known that was going to be an issue all season long. Yep, we should have known that they were going to be able to, teams are going to be able to do that to the Texans every week. That's the really scary part coming out of this game, is if you don't get some of these things cleaned up, you're going to be in a disastrous spot this season.
Yeah, my question would be, how do they get cleaned up? Because you just said that, yeah, they get cleaned up. My question is how? Like, what's gonna be the approach there? Like, is it coaching? Is it schematic? Like, how do you clean up Jonathan Grenard just lining up over Shaq Mason and dominating him? Like, that's how does that get cleaned up? That's the question that I have with this offensive line, is how does that happen? Sure, they're not going to get as many procedure penalties, I hope. I mean, the false starts aren't going anywhere anytime soon, but I'm assuming they're going to figure out where to line up instead of lining up back. Titus Howard said that there's like some sort of I don't know what Titus Howard was really talking about.
Oh, the excuse making from those guys is pathetic. That's just sickening to hear Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard blame anybody but themselves for this. It's not that hard, even if you believe different, to publicly take accountability. Laramie Tunsil and the quotes from Aaron Wilson, they were disgusting. The Laramie Tunsil saying, well, it's not me on the false starts. It's a communication thing amongst the whole offensive line. Okay. All right. Well, you're the captain. Figure it out. Fix the offensive line communication. You're the captain on the team. You're the left tackle. You're one of the highest paid players in the entire NFL. Those guys follow you. Figure it out. And then Titus Howard's like, oh, well, the league didn't, they're targeting us. And Tunsil said the same thing. They're targeting us. Like, they're targeting you because you don't know where to line up. Laramie Tunsil's damn near even with CJ Stroud on one of these snaps, and he's wondering why he got a penalty. The league's targeting you? No, you're not lining up right.
Let's hear what Titus Howard said. I tried to make sense of this, but I had to listen to it 3 times in order to make sense. It is Reaction Monday with S&L.
Yeah, we had one called the first 2 weeks. So, I mean, we line up the same way we lined up the first 2 weeks tonight, and then it was just some reason tonight they were like, all right, we're just going to call them. But it was just inconsistent.
What were they saying it was?
Saying got to be up further on the line. I mean, but then again, the next play, you'll be in the same spot, and they're like, oh, yeah, you're good. So, like, I mean, I don't know. That's tough. That's tough. So, I mean, I just moved up further as I could, and then I looked at the guy, and he was like, are you good? So I was like, I mean, I'm lined up even with the center now. So, I mean, that's what I got to do. I got to do it. But, I mean, definitely something that, I mean, we're going to have to work with the NFL with. Like, because, I mean, it's a problem all around the league for all tackles, having to move up so far on the line of scrimmage. And then it becomes a problem on the road games when you're on silent count, and then guys getting out the ball before you get a can because you're so far up. So it's just something.
All right.
Will Kunkel with that video there.
Yeah, I don't really get it. Will Kunkel, Fox 26.
Well, if the NFL has this thing where offensive linemen have to line up further, how come Anderson and Hunter aren't eating their tackles alive? Like, what's like the first one? I would understand one illegal formation because you didn't line up right. I would forgive one of them. And the first one that Tunsil had came on the back end of the 4 straight penalties that they had, which was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. And the 4 straight penalties. I can understand one of them, but to have it a second time and to have that wipe away a Tank Dell play, like the only semblance of cohesion that the offense had for a moment, like, and he's lined up, Landry. He's lined up. Like, if he looked right, he would not see another offensive lineman. Like, that's how far back he was lined up. Like, I went and watched the play 10 times. Like, I don't understand how they could sit there and say it's not our fault. Like, even if you don't believe that it's your fault, you got to say it's our fault. The offensive line stunk. It ruined any chance to have success on offense yesterday.
Yeah, there was literally zero chance to win the game with the way the offensive line played. The craziest thing is I don't think CJ Stroud really played terrible. I don't think it, I mean, obviously 2 interceptions, not good, but a lot of his better efforts and the potential momentum was killed by the offensive line. And let's be honest, like at the start of the game, Cade Stover, like Brevin Jordan was immediately missed. It was a question of how much will they miss Brevin Jordan? Well, Cade Stover right off the top, he gets a holding penalty that negates a 16-yard play to Nico Collins. The next play results in an interception. Then you had on the next drive with the Texans kind of moving the rock. They go for it on 4th and 3. They move the chains, and then Stroud gets sacked by Grenard, who completely punked Stover. Fairbairn misses the 54-yarder. We go to series 3 with the Texans down 14-0. A beautiful pass to Hutchinson. That gets negated by illegal formation by Tunsil. Then they have to punt. And then in the second quarter, I actually thought the other 2 phases, they actually gave you a chance to build back the momentum. I thought the defense and the special teams actually held up nicely in the second quarter to try to keep this close. You had the near interception by Bullock. The Vikings get in on the party. They have an illegal motion, which negates Jefferson catch. And then the 4th series is the worst drive in the history of Texans football. I don't know that you can find more slop. You get Diggs for a combination of about 30 yards on 2 plays, but then on 3rd and 4, you get a Titus false start, another false start, a Tunsil false start, and then an illegal formation, which is incomplete. So you're immediately out of field goal range. Then the defense holds again, and then a Tank Dell pass, probably one of CJ Stroud's best passes of the season that takes you into midfield. That gets negated by another Tunsil penalty, and then you punt on 4th and 3. So even with the defense and the special teams giving you a chance, the offensive line gave you no chance in hell.
Yeah, there were times where they just flat out missed guys. Where, I mean, Jonathan Grenard, you talked about it. He just ran past Shaq Mason at one point. There was another play where Mason just doesn't block anybody. Like I don't know. He was serviceable last year. He's been awful this year. He just didn't block anybody. Titus Howard got beat up. Andrew Van Ginkel beat up Laramie Tunsil on one play. Landry, there was one play. They rushed 3 guys. Dropped 8. And Stroud had to scramble to get away from the pressure. Like 3 guys. They should have thrown those guys out like it was the club.
Well, there was also a basic stunt at the end of the second quarter. It honestly looked like something that they do in Pee Wee, where the linebacker just lines up behind the DN and he just goes down the middle, and he went in there untouched.
And there wasn't good stuff in the rushing attack either. Like, they couldn't get anything going on the ground. Titus is getting blown off the ball. Scruggs is getting blown off the ball. Juice Scruggs tried to block a guy, ended up tackling the running back by blocking the guy into the running back at one point. Like, Stover couldn't run block. He had a terrible game.
He had a really bad game, to the point where I almost wonder, like, do you look at some of the other guys and just look at them as an option?
Well, that's my question: is should he have been in that position? Is he capable of handling that position?
Yes.
Dalton Schultz can't block. He got destroyed by Grenard on one
body
play.
language really bothers me, and I understand that it's the same way even when they're winning, but his whole mindset yesterday was just completely sluggish. Like from the near fumble where it just was like, throw, and I don't know that he knew whether he did or didn't fumble. That could have gone either way. There was a last-second prayer where CJ throws it across the middle, and I think Dalton might be a little bit more hurt than he's letting on. But I'll say this, like the body language of Dalton Schultz, it's never great, but it's very frustrating in 4 touchdown losses. And I think a lot of fans can kind of vibe with what I'm saying. I like Dalton, but he's not healthy. He's not playing good. And it just, the whole vibe was just sluggish from him yesterday.
And I just feel like the offensive line sort of permeated the hopelessness of the offense. It just, you couldn't protect, you couldn't get any consistency going, and nothing you tried worked. I mean, they tried some, even when they got something moving, it was Stroud almost got killed on the touchdown drive twice at the very end. Like Titus Howard just lets a guy, like there's 2 guys, Howard's got to pick one. One guy's already kind of past him, and Titus just lets him go. Thank God Stroud gets the ball out to Cam Akers and it's a touchdown. But like, if he doesn't get the ball out to Akers or Akers is covered, like Stroud gets crushed. Like, I just don't understand. And like, some of it's the offensive line. You got to block the guy. And then you can get a little bit deeper and it's like, well, why are you calling this play? How are they handling the correct blocking assignments? Was that the right type of play to call in this moment? But it becomes really difficult to criticize Bobby Slowick when they're rushing 3 and CJ Stroud's got to scramble. Like, but that can't happen.
But when it comes to play calling, I do want to make one thing very clear, because I'm guilty of this, and I kind of woke up this morning, and this was my big thought when I woke up. I think we got to be fair. We got to criticize the team. We got to analyze the team the way that we do. Starting with the offensive line, I'll get into this offensive coordinator thing, because I think there's something that we're not giving enough attention to. From the offensive line perspective, I never thought this was going to be a really, really good offensive line. Like, I don't know why anyone would have thought that for anything other than the money that you've invested in it. I do not understand why people thought Titus Howard was a really, really good right tackle. He's okay, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know how that happened, where Titus Howard suddenly became a guy who was a really good right tackle. It almost feels like, because he was so bad at guard, people automatically just assume, well, put him back in his natural position and he's going to be really good. That's number one. Shaq Mason he's old, man. Like, I'm not saying that in a bad way. Shaq Mason's played in this league a long time, man. It's hard to expect Shaq Mason to be really, really, really good. You're paying him like he's a top 10 guard. He's not a top 10 guard in the league. I'm sorry. Titus Howard's paid like a top 5 right tackle. He's not a top 5 right tackle in the league. Juice Scruggs is a young center. We'll see how that goes. He's also banged up. So we'll see how that goes. Kenyon Green, man, it's really bad. When it's bad, but there's been some things. So Kenyon Green, we'll see. Laramie Tunsil is what Laramie Tunsil is. Laramie Tunsil is going to get penalties. He's going to pass block at an elite level. And the people in the locker room, they respect him. But so this offensive line is never going to be really, really good. As far as the offensive coordinator goes, I actually thought Bobby Slowick was fine yesterday. Like, early on, they were actually running the ball good early. A couple of his third down plays got swept aside. Now, I heard I saw Seth Payne say that the offensive line and communication is his responsibility. If that's the case, then damn, that's something that he's going to have to figure out. But I want to look at the other offensive coordinator, and I think this needs to be mentioned. And I know we're in a honeymoon phase with DeMeco Ryans, and I love DeMeco Ryans. I think DeMeco Ryans is going to be the coach of this team for 10 years, and I love the mannerisms and all that. Kevin O'Connell kicked DeMeco Ryans' ass.
Yep.
Yesterday. So we like to sit here and we talk about, well, Brian Flores is just confusing Bobby Slowick and all this. If we're putting ass whoopings in proportion, I think that Bobby Slowick getting his ass whooped by that defense, I don't know that they were doing anything overly crazy on the defense. I don't know that they were really doing anything insane. I mean, I think the Flores gets kind of romanticized for like basic stunts, and really at times they were just lining up their defensive line. Their defensive line was whooping the offensive line's ass, and when they weren't, there were penalties. So yeah, Flores got the best of him clearly, but I don't think that it was nearly as much of an ass whooping as what Kevin O'Connell gave DeMeco Ryans and Matt Burke. And it was from every layer. Like the top player and the player that you thought you needed to take away early on, he set the tone. Jefferson moved the chains on third down. He got the touchdown on 3rd and goal. And then in the second half, it was Naylor's turn, and Naylor was doing whatever the hell he wanted. When you had time to adjust and you went into the locker room, that very first drive, Kevin O'Connell just comes out there and sets the tone, and they kicked your ass. He was finding Jalen Petrie. He was taking advantage of the weakness that, we wondered how long it would take a coach to do. I think there might be a blueprint there for opposing coaches where they're going to start seeking out Jalen Petrie. I don't know what he was doing on that pass interference, because quite frankly, he was in the right place. And they actually snuck out that trick play, like the trick play. They played that perfect. Like it was actually like perfectly played by the defense. Jalen Petrie, for whatever reason, was doing like a pat down when all he had to do was turn around and he would have been fine. But that's the Jalen Petrie and coverage experience. But the point I'm making is that DeMeco Ryans got his ass kicked by Kevin O'Connell yesterday, and it doesn't seem like it really gets mentioned as much. Everybody wants to talk about Flores and Bobby Slowick should do this and that, but we've got to be honest with ourselves that Kevin O'Connell completely put on a clinic of DeMeco Ryans' defense, and it was enough because the Texans' offense wasn't even getting involved in the shootout, so there was no chance.
Well, my biggest question is like if you're like, what's your excuse, Bobby Slowick? Like what's the excuse? Because you look around the NFL and guys in much more precarious positions than Bobby Slowick had much better days. I think about what Green Bay's got. Matt LaFleur's their guy, runs their offense. They put 30 up with a backup quarterback. Now it's the Tennessee Titans, so maybe you want to go ahead and just kind of wash it away because it's the Tennessee Titans. That's fine. That's fine. Let's go to the Rams. Half the damn team's on IR, and they gut out a comeback win after trailing 14-0 in the first quarter with a bunch of guys in their running game. And it's like a bunch of regular guys in the wide receiver spot in the running game. What's the excuse? They came into this game with the offensive line they want. They came into this game with their wide receivers healthy. Yeah, Joe Mixon's not there, but this style of offense is supposed to be able to support guys. So what's the excuse? Okay, the excuse may just simply be the 5 guys that have to block didn't block well enough. If that's the excuse, okay, that's got to get better. How does it get better? I don't know. I guess you got to keep guys in. I guess you got to, promote a guy from the practice squad at tight end that can actually block. Maybe that's the situation. But we can be critical of Slowick not rising to the moment when Kevin O'Connell's sitting there and he's missing his number 2 wide receiver, and he's facing a defense that just ripped the head off of a guy the previous week, and he had answers for everything. He got his star wide receiver the ball. He got the backup the ball. He threw in a trick play. They ran the ball at key moments. They pass blocked really well. They figured out how to slow down a pass rush that was really good the previous week.
I thought Slowick that he dialed one up on 3rd down. They moved the chains there. There were a couple 3rd down plays where the Texans executed. So, do I think Bobby Slowick had a good game? No, but it's hard for me to really grade him.
Well, that's my thing is if the excuse for Slowick is the 4 guys can't or the 5 guys can't block, then okay. How do you go about fixing that? How do you go about changing that? It just may be simple as those 5 guys have got to play much better than they did. They've got to have the give a crap meter get turned up a little bit.
Yeah, and that's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out. I don't know how this offensive line gets fixed. I just think if this offensive line can be okay, then you have a chance. Here's my thing. I'm just going to drop this bomb right now. And we've talked about this Texans team, and we've talked about the process, and I think they're a little bit ahead of the process right now. I don't, do I think that the Texans are the overwhelming favorite to win the division? Yes. Do I think that they can make noise in the playoffs? Perhaps. Do I think they're, a team like the Chiefs that can find ways to win no matter what? Hell no. They're not there yet. They can play bad and be okay teams, but when they play good teams, they've got to be on their A game. There's no sleepwalking. Like Kansas City yesterday, I don't even know if they feel like they had a great game. They beat Atlanta, and Atlanta's a pretty good team. The Texans can't play okay and beat a really good team. So that, I guess the breaking news is they're not with the Chiefs. But I kind of want to localize this in, I want to say, like, this squad, I feel like this is kind of like an O'Brien era team. And there's obviously there's obviously differences and stuff. And obviously you're young and you're trying to build things, but I think there is like a large element, and I'm talking more even like the early Watson teams where you're relying on the quarterback to save butts. You're relying on the quarterback to overcome mediocre offensive line play. You're not consistent. Your floor from week to week is low, but your ceiling is high. You have elite wide receiver play, but you can't run the ball. You have a clear flaw on defense that opposing coaches can perhaps scheme and get the most of you. And this, I mean, that was a good team. Like the O'Brien team was expected to win the division, and it was a poor division, the majority. So you almost expected them to be able to win the division, but you weren't able to get up to that notch. And I'm not saying, I mean, this is not it, being in that position 2 years into the second year into the CJ DeMeco experience, that's fine. You're still ahead of schedule, but there do seem to be flaws that you're way too dependent on the quarterback. Like, we're talking about a team that can't run the ball. They can't block consistently. They get a lot of penalties. So you're asking CJ Stroud to overcome everything. It's kind of similar. Like I kind of find my way looking at this and saying, okay, Indianapolis Colts, CJ, save us, please. Oh, well, yeah, we need you to save us after the 2-minute warning, but you're going to have to back it up 5 yards because Kenyon Green just got a 5-yard penalty. Oh, please save us. Go ahead and save the day. It feels very, very similar to that, where you're almost asking too much of the quarterback.
Well, I mean, like I think that's the situation that they found themselves in through these first 3 games. I mean, the defense took care of their business in the second game. You know, it's not like the Texans lit up the scoreboard and were getting a ton from the offense in that standpoint in the second one. But there's a lot of teams that feel like they just kind of push it on the QB and hey, figure it out for us. And the good guys sometimes do, but you can't do that every game. Like this team is not built like the Watson era, the O'Brien era. Like, they didn't have a choice. Like the offensive line stunk. They didn't have the skill position players. Like, they've got the players for this to not all be on CJ Stroud. And so when it falls back onto him like that, it is a disappointing performance, and it's something that's got to get remedied quick. Like CJ talked about it at the podium. He's like, I don't like the off schedule stuff. I want the train to run on time. I want to drop back, hit the play as it's designed, and keep things going. Like, yeah, I'll do it when I want to, like, or when I need to, but that's not how we want to operate. Like, they weren't able to do that yesterday. They weren't able to execute the way that things were drawn up or play. Like, even some of the plays that Stroud did make, you know, tank over the middle, the one that counted, the one that didn't count, you know, Diggs over the middle, like even some of that stuff, he's having to, you know, kind of maneuver in the pocket, step up, you know, kind of crazy angle on the throw. Like it should look easier. This is a 3-game thing. This isn't a yesterday they stunk. Like, it should be a bit more well-oiled offensively than it has looked in the first 3 weeks from a passing standpoint. And then the running game stunk for 2 games too.
Teeman asks, aren't most teams dependent on the QB in a sense? You're trying to sound smart by adding in a sense in there. I don't know what that means. In a sense, yeah, you depend on your QB. Teams with bad QBs usually don't do anything. I get what your point is, though. Well, we've seen bad QBs find ways to win divisions. We've seen bad QBs effective. We see good QBs go out there and able to win games when they don't have their A game because they're able to run the ball and they're able to play good on the offensive line. So you can be too dependent on a quarterback. Look at Andrew Luck. Look at Deshaun when he was here. You can ask your quarterback to do too much. Buffalo is finding their groove right now because they found a way to effectively run the rock, and they're not asking Josh Allen to do as much. And they can lose Stefon Diggs and continue to do that. The Texans right now can't run the rock, and they're asking CJ Stroud to do too much.
Yeah, I mean and they can't put any consistency together. Like it'd be one thing if, hey, okay, they can't run. Okay, well let's put it in the air. Let's get Tank on some short stuff. Let's get Diggs on some short stuff. Let's get it going. Like when was the last time? Like, and this happened a couple of times last year, and you could kind of see, and this was the one of the exciting elements of what this offense could be long-term with season. Like, when was the last time it felt like they really put together a sustained drive where they kind of worked it down the field and you had a, okay, like that was a nice call. Like, oh, okay, they overcame, a play that didn't go for as many yards as they expected. Oh, the defense made a good play. They still got a first down. Like they haven't had that in 3 games where the passing attack has been heavily involved in that. They had it a couple of times with the rushing attack in game 1. That feels like a million years away, though. Like, that feels like that was a million years ago with the way the offensive line's played the 2 weeks since. So, like, the consistency, putting it together, like, yeah, they're going to hit some big plays. You hit Nico, gets them in the red zone. They ultimately score on that. But just like they don't seem to be capable of, like, putting together a long, sustained drive. Part of that's the offensive line. Part of that's other guys just not getting the job done that are outside the offensive line, like blocking tight ends or running backs and things like that. So it's the ceiling is a lot lower than we expected it to be for this offense for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, and the other thing about the offense is I just don't know if they're going to even be able to run the ball when Mixon gets back. That's my concern. Like, and I don't know, like, do you just say F it and not run it at all? But running the ball, although they showed some glimpses early on, but running the ball just seems very difficult. Very, 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 very difficult.
I mean, look, is this going to be a team that can only run the football when they play teams that can't stop the run? Like that, because that's what it is right now. Like, I mean, they're only going to be able to run the football against teams that can't stop the run. Then that's not good enough, because the Bears have a pretty decent reputation of stopping the run. The Vikings had a pretty decent reputation last year. They added to their defense this year. And then if they're only going to be able to run the football against teams that are bad at the run, then they're going to not be able to run the football very regularly. Like, yeah. And that's the thing too. And that was the conversation. That was the nerdy, coverage this, shell that conversation last week. Is like, defenses want you to run the football. Let's see if you can run the football. Okay, if you can't run the football, then we'll just tee off on your offensive line. We'll make your quarterback uncomfortable, and there's no consistency to your offense, and you'll punt it to us, and then we'll go about our business.
The most troubling thing, though, if you're talking about this opportunity that you have with CJ Stroud, which is maximizing what you can while he's on his rookie deal, you're basically going to McDonald's and paying steak 48 prices for this offensive line like that. And when you have a budget, that's kind of a problem. And that's what I talk about ROI. Quite frankly, I barely know what the hell ROI means. But when it comes to football, I can make some sense of it. I think all around this football team, you're getting return on investment. On the offensive line, you're absolutely not. And I always hear, whenever Laramie Tunsil has games like this, I always hear, well, he's one of the best in the league, but I really, like, is that really true? Like, is it there's like times where he's good, but is this really worth what you're paying? And the most emotion that we've seen out of Laramie Tunsil really has been when other guys get contracts and stuff. Like, that's been the most that we see out of Laramie Tunsil. I just don't. I don't know that. I don't know if it's I don't think it's necessarily a mindset thing. But when you hear Titus Howard repeating what Laramie Tunsil's saying, and Titus Howard's not Laramie Tunsil, it just kind of makes me wonder, did you see what the Tennessee offensive lineman said yesterday?
Joe Skoranek.
He said, we suck. We deserve all the criticism that we get. You can't allow 8 sacks. We're garbage. We're garbage. Whatever fans want to say, they should say. There's no excuse for that.
Peter Skoranek. Yeah.
Skoranek. But that was what he came out and said. That was it. I've seen Taylor Lewan before, even 3 years ago. Before he could even get asked questions, he said, yeah, my penalties are an effing disgrace. It cannot happen, blah, blah, blah. You have 2 guys in Tunsil and Howard who are coming out and basically acting like the NFL just randomly has an issue with the Texans. And look, if they're going to come out and play better, that's fine. But that kind of seems like a counterproductive mindset to be able to get stuff done and be able to fix problems. If you think that the biggest part of the problem is something that you're not actually doing and something that's not actually what's in your control.
It's just it has to piss you off when you watch Sunday Night Football last night and they're talking about Wanya Morris from Oklahoma, and he's a 3rd-round pick last year, and the freaking world champions are like, yeah, we're going to make you our left tackle. We'll just turn this thing over to you. And then Collinsworth's out here like, man, look how much better he got and look how good he is. And like, he's getting it done. And he's only allowed a couple of pressures. Like, yeah, it's the Falcons and their pass rush is awful. And like the Vikings are a little bit tougher. I get that. Well, if the Vikings are tougher and here's Wanya Morris, Laramie Tunsil's supposed to be up here. And like the penalties, they suck. They stand out. But if you were a badass every other time you went out there outside of when you false start, like you would live with it. But Andrew Van Ginkel shouldn't be giving you the business on 3rd down. Like, and you shouldn't be out there incapable of running the football left. They primarily run the football right because Laramie Tunsil, the book on him is that he is unwilling to run block. And it's like, you pay this guy so much money. And like you said, the emotions only show up for him when he wants to throw an eye emoji out there because somebody else got paid and he thinks he's better than that guy, or he wants to put the, taking notes emoji on some writer that we've never heard of saying he's not very good. Guess what? Writer we've never heard of is right through 3 games.
Yeah. And I just hope that there's the mindset to be able to correct it because, again, no expectation of the offensive line to be great, but I mean, be okay. Vegas swarming the super chat. You ain't never hate. Swarm. Is there a world where this is who we are and we're just overrated? It depends where you have them rated. Like, I think they're a team that's a playoff team and they can make some noise. Super Bowl contender? No, I mean, look, I'm not dismissing any possibility. I'm not dismissing any possibility, but this is an early game, and the most troubling thing about this game is it seems like some of this stuff can linger.
That is the scary part. Is like the Minnesota Vikings kicked your ass yesterday. There's about 15 teams across the league that would have beat you yesterday. Maybe some of it wouldn't have been an ass kicking, but there's about 15 teams yesterday that if you played like that would have beat you. And so that's the part that would concern you is if you start seeing stuff from this game start to show up in the Jaguars game, in the Bills game. You go on the road against the Packers. Like you start to see it time and time and time again. It's like, oh, like maybe that is who the Texans are. Like, but you hope that there's stuff from that game that you can clean up. But the scary part is some of that stuff may just be a talent issue. Like you talked about the offensive line. I don't think it's ROI. I think it's value. The value is not there. Like when you spend big money, you're supposed to get big production, and you're not getting it. And so that's the scary part is because you can't scheme. Like those 5 guys just got to play better. Like that's not a scheme. That's not a this. That's not a, like those 5 guys got to go kick the defensive line's ass, and they're not doing it.
Derek says, start wrapping your mind. Man, we're going draft. Geez. We got to get to Jacksonville quick. Start now wrapping your minds around the idea of drafting another tackle in the first 2 rounds next draft. Appreciate the coverage. Yeah, I think that's a possibility, especially with how expensive tackles are and how expensive their tackles are.
let me go ahead and get this out there because I've seen it in the comment section. I've seen it on social media. They're not benching Laramie Tunsil. So they're not going to bench him. And they're probably not benching Titus Howard either. So those are the tackles. Like, I understand Blake Fisher's.
I wouldn't dismiss that last one.
Well, he's playing against Jacksonville. I could see a scenario down the road where Titus gets benched. But
Yeah,
that's not happening
That's
not happening this week. That's not happening this week.
Really dismiss it though.
I mean, like, again, it could have happened this season. Yes, with Titus Howard, it could. It's not happening this week though. Those guys are going to run out there and try to block Josh Allen and Trevon Walker this week. They're not making a change at tackle in week 4 of the season. Okay, so let's just go ahead and cut that conversation off at the pass.
Let's go through the big plays of the game. It is Reaction Monday. These are always a little bit tougher, but always remember, as I always say, we're all in it together. So you got to relive the game. It's therapeutic. And then, in the words of Bill Belichick, you go on to whoever. They'll go on to Jacksonville. By the way, BetUS just saw the betting line. It is 4.5. So the Texans open as a 4.5-point favorite against the Jags. Look at you. You betting on Jacksonville? Is that a betting on Jacksonville face?
I don't know how you can sit here, watch this team, and look, Jacksonville may go out there and get the doors blown off of them by Buffalo.
Or get hurt. I mean, this is before they even have to go out there and play Buffalo. It kind of seems like a decent, variable.
I mean, yeah, that's a weird variable. I mean, the line's obviously going to go up, I would tell you, if Jacksonville gets beat up, they're on the road too. It's not like they get to be, comfortable. That Monday night short turnaround,
in Buffalo.
Yeah, they're in Buffalo. Then they got to come back home. Then they got to come to Houston. So they got a tough week of football ahead of them. But I mean, you can't. I mean, you're sitting here telling me that team yesterday is going to win by 5 or more points. Like, God, I don't know.
I'm not telling you that at all. That's what
the line tells you is possible. I didn't see that possible yesterday.
All right, so here are the big plays of the game, and let's just kind of relive these and talk about what went down with the Texans on the field. I think immediately, the Cade Stover hold was big. I think it kind of killed the momentum early on, and it led to the C.J. Stroud interception. So right off the top, you have Cade Stover getting dominated and held. I thought that was a really, really big play, and it made it hard for the Texans to kind of get a start going. And for as much as we talk about how bad things were, I mean, you start the play off with a 16-yard gain. You're probably feeling pretty good about yourself, and maybe things change a little bit.
I would be. We'll never know, but play number 2 on the play sheet. If that's allowed to happen, which, by the way, if Stover doesn't hold him, he probably murders C.J. Stroud. So, the play probably doesn't happen either way. So it's either the penalty or a sack. But if that play is allowed to stand, say there's no penalty, I can't imagine the next play is also, right over the middle of pass. Like, Bobby Slowick probably tries to get Cam Akers involved. But once you have the pass, it's 1st and 20. Hey, let's make up some ground. Let's get the ball in the air. And then Minnesota's ready for it. Boom, they tip it up in the air. And then freaking Camus Grugier Hill comes down with it. Like, my God.
So then you had the Jefferson 3rd down on 3rd and 6. He moves the chains. Then 3rd and goal, the touchdown.
What was going on?
So you had that. I don't know. Charles,
are we going to dig in more?
Charles Davis was really, really confused why Jefferson wasn't getting more resistance.
Are we gonna spend a little bit more time on that later?
Yeah,
we're going through the big plays now. Okay, all right.
We will. We interrupt this program for 979 H-Town Swarm in the super chat.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
979 H-Town fan says, how is Shaq Mason getting passed over in the conversation? Dude is awful. I talked about him earlier, and this was something that me and Stoots were talking about in camp. I said, dude, this guy looks like he's washed. He looks old. He's moving old. When you get to a certain age, you just don't move as well. He's kind of moving like Matt Kalish. Shaq Mason might be the worst offensive lineman they got right now. I mean, you can pick your poison. He might be the worst offensive lineman that they have right now. So you might have just joined at a different time. He's not good. He's not of all the people that I think like you could like bench, like I would not be opposed to. I don't know. Can Kendrick Green play right guard? I'm not opposed to Shaq Mason, just seeing what it looks like without him.
Yeah, I think that person showed up late because we talked about Shaq Mason. You know, it looked like he was chasing a balloon at different times, and then it's like guys are running right by him. It's like find someone to hit.
Yeah, and hopefully they come back and look good. So then, as we continue the big plays, near disaster, you had another Tunsil false start. Then you had a Schultz fumble overturned. Texans get some momentum going. 4th and 3, Bobby Slowick, quick play out to Dalton Schultz. That moves the chains. And then this was a really big play too. And we're going back to Cade Stover. Cade Stover he was the best friend of the Minnesota Vikings early on. He was terrible because after a 9-yard run on first down from Cam Akers, and this was after a 7-yard run on the first possession, Jonathan Grenard lines up on Cade Stover and just completely physically mauls him and sacks CJ Stroud. So you lose 10 yards on that play. It turns it into 3rd and 11, and then Fairbairn misses the 54-yarder after getting gassed up all year. So you can talk about the missed field goal, but when you have 2nd and 1 as a result of a 9-yard run, there are so many. You can basically say that you have 3 plays to get 1 yard in that situation, and Cade Stover gets physically mauled by Jonathan Grenard. I saw someone say, "Why is Cade Stover blocking Jonathan Grenard?" If Cade Stover can't block Jonathan Grenard, we have problems. Like I know, like there's going to be times where he's going to have to block a DN one-on-one. Jonathan Grenard, I don't think he's a guy that you have to like shift attention over to. At least he shouldn't be. He looked like it yesterday. He got some Stover. He got some Shaq Mason. He got some of that tackle stuff. So I don't know what to say about Cade Stover's start, but there are 2 plays you can point to directly with Cade Stover. That play and the hold right off the bat and say, Cade Stover, you missed Brevin Jordan, I guess. I mean, I guess Brevin Jordan missed a little bit more than we thought.
Well, I mean, it turns out they weren't lying when they talked about how important Brevin Jordan's pass blocking was. Turns out they weren't lying about that. I mean, that's one of those things that sometimes you just say, but turns out they weren't lying.
Yeah, and on the chat, Dizzy, he leads the league in sacks, but he's not someone you pay attention to. You obviously got to pay attention to him, but I mean, if you're having to shift your entire attention to Jonathan Grenard, I think that's a little bit ridiculous. Like I think Cade Stover should be able to slow down Jonathan Grenard at this point. Maybe you don't want to put him on an island. Maybe we're kind of learning that, but yeah, I don't sit there and follow around Jonathan Grenard. I don't feel that way. Maybe I don't have the respect for Jonathan Grenard that I should. I like him. I've always enjoyed talking to him and had him on the show a couple times, but yeah, I'm not there with him yet.
Real quick on the so they get blown up on 2nd and 1. Okay, so that's we just talked about the Stover play. You know, Grenard's doing his karate celebration and all that stuff. So it's 54 yards from that spot. On 3rd down, the Vikings get heat again, and CJ can't complete a pass that's like usually a pass he completes to Dalton Schultz because there was so much heat. And then you have to kick the 54-yarder. It's like the offensive line, right after Stover doesn't get his job done, then the O-line doesn't get their job done on the very next play.
Yeah, not good. Then we keep moving on. You have the Aaron Jones touchdown after the Jefferson 28 yards, just right along that defense. So you get the 14-0 lead. This is kind of the danger zone for the Texans. This is where they just got to kind of figure some stuff out.
I felt like there was, and it's a moot point. You got your ass kicked, but I felt like there was an offensive pass interference on that Jones touchdown that didn't get called. I mean, they literally had a guy run across the middle and barrel into the defender trying to cover Jones. And so, I mean, it didn't get called. It happens. But I thought that was a poorly officiated play.
All right, so we go to its situation at the end of the first quarter. By the way, 14 points allowed, first time since week 3 in the first quarter of last season. against I think it was Indy or week 2 against Indy, excuse me. Tunsil just completely does what Tunsil has done. You had the first JJ Taylor sighting. CJ Stroud finds Xavier Hutchinson. They move the chains, but there's an illegal formation by Tunsil. Then CJ Stroud gets forced out on just a basic bull rush. But Tommy Townsend with a nice punt, he punts him inside the 5, actually gets run into as well. So special teams does their part. Yeah.
That was one of the moments where special teams stood out in a positive way.
Then the defense actually holds them. Jefferson has a catch negated on 3rd and 9, illegal motion. Then you have a false start. And then on 3rd and 19, I didn't understand this from the officials. I didn't think the officials were bad. I didn't understand what the F this meant. Should have been grounding, but they said that he wasn't under duress. He's sitting in his end zone with the pocket getting pushed back, and he throws the ball to no one to avoid the sack. So I don't know. They said he wasn't under duress. You're going to have to explain to me what the hell that means. Does that mean if the quarterback just sits back there and acts like he's calm, he can just chunk the ball into the ground when the pocket's being pushed back, especially when he's in his own end zone and doesn't want to get sacked? I don't know what that meant. The grounding has gotten weird. Mahomes gets away with it like crazy, where the receiver's 15 yards up the field and you throw it 15 yards away to where it's not even a catchable ball, but you're intentionally avoiding it. And I didn't understand what he was not under duress meant in that situation.
That should have been grounding, or that should have been a fumble. That was a total bullcrap call. That was horrible. He's not under duress. Then why did he throw the ball into the ground to nobody? He was dumping it so he didn't get a safety.
Yeah,
that's what happened. That was a horrid call.
So you have the special teams pin them back. You have the defense do their part, and then the Texans they get the ball at the 39-yard line, and the offensive line just falls apart. You get Diggs for 19. You get Diggs on 3rd and 12, and then on 3rd and 4. 4 straight penalties take you out of field goal range. And this is where you start to wonder, okay, it might just be one of those days. 4 straight penalties is insane. That's not crowd noise. That's embarrassing. That does not happen like that. I don't know how many times that's happened in NFL history. It can't be a lot. 4 straight penalties on the offensive line. There is not a crowd in the world that deserves credit for 4 penalties. There'll be instances, there'll be situations, but 4 straight penalties, that's unacceptable.
Yeah, Howard false starts. Scruggs gets called for the head movement thing that felt a little overzealous by the officiating, and then Tunsil false starts because, of course, he does. And then he gets the illegal formation that gets declined. Don't worry, it got declined. That's still going on the resume. It might have been a decline penalty. That's still going on the penalties called against Laramie Tunsil resume. And so you've mentioned this point, they get backed out of field goal range at this point. They've already missed one. At this point, Landry, if the game was 14-6 versus 14-0, how different do you feel?
I think you feel much different. I mean, it's a 1-possession game. You've been able to stop the bleeding. And you can build some sort of momentum. So, I think momentum is a thing. You hear DeMeco Ryans talk about all the time. Like, just getting any type of points on the board, I think it would have been really big. But it's 14-0. You have the missed field goal, and you have the offensive line pushing you out of field goal range. So that's where you are. And then the defense holds up again, Cody. Like, that's the other thing. Like, Kamari Lassiter has like a real WWE style tackle. He looks over to the sidelines. He's trying to get him fired up on 2nd down. On 3rd down, a false start by the Vikings. And then Danielle Hunter gets a pressure, and he forces an incompletion of Sam Darnold. So you get another chance, okay? And it's 14-0. You can make this a 1-possession game, but then Laramie Tunsil, again, 3rd and 10. Tank Dell. Bobby kind of seems like he's in his bag on 3rd down, and so does CJ. 3rd and 10, Tank Dell. Boom, dart into Minnesota territory. That gets negated by another Tunsil penalty. You get a 12-yard gain for Diggs, and you punt. So once again, Laramie Tunsil, offensive line, even like the defense is giving you a chance. The defense is giving you a chance. You can even argue that CJ Stroud's giving you a chance to win, but it just keeps getting negated by the offensive line. And you're talking about There's a fine line between a 2-possession game and a 1-possession game. There's an even finer line between a 2-possession game and a 3-possession game. And that's where you're flirting. And they're trying like hell to get you into that 1-2 possession zone, and they're just unable to do it. Like CJ Stroud, if we put together a highlight tape of third down plays from CJ Stroud that were taken away, it would actually be a pretty damn good weekend highlight tape.
4th and 3 coming out of the 2-minute warning. They punt. Feels like the right decision to me, because if you go down 21-0, they get the ball out of halftime. They turn it into 28-0. You're done before the second half even gets going, even if they put 3 on the board. So punting, and the defense had 2 nice drives in a row to that point. So punting, I just saw some go for it. No, punting was right.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
Sid says, why is Bobby letting rookie Stover block one-on-one against D? And has he not seen if he can block Hunter in practice? I don't have a problem with him having to block Grenard one time. Grenard had a few sacks yesterday. Like, it's not like he's just completely dominant. There's a lot of Grenard love going on out there. Like, so you're telling me we got a scheme now to Cade Stover just performed bad. He hasn't done that in practice. Could just be a rookie moment. So I don't know. Like, does he need help? Okay, we'll see how they adjust. Would Brevin Jordan have needed the help? Who knows? But that's just what happened. The ragtag O-line. This is from Maxwell 77. Appreciate you. The ragtag O-line versus the Steelers last year makes this O-line look even worse. 0 sacks with 4 injured linemen. They deserve no excuses. They have found ways to win without these tackles. So you do have a visual. I hear people say, well, what do you think it's going to be like? I don't know. I kind of liked some of their performances without him yesterday. Not all of them, but I like some of them.
Josh Jones and George Fant.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but that wasn't roughing on Hunter. Brutal call in that situation. We have some momentum. I have some thoughts on that. I'll get into that as we continue to go through the big plays. But we're at 14-0 right now, and you're kind of in that danger zone. Minnesota gets the rock again, this time at their 10-yard line. So special teams has flipped the field position at this point, and this is where you go get points. Like they've Townsend and company, they've flipped the field position. Like, this is your opportunity. It's a 14-point game. CJ Stroud has had a couple of plays negated. You've been kicked out of backed out of field goal range, juvenile style, and you have the missed field goal from Fairbairn. So the Texans once again, They hold them. Tim Settle with a huge sack on second down. However, on 3rd and 11, Jefferson gets an out on Stingley. This one was the weirdest one to me, because it's one thing on like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 11. That was probably, he made bigger plays, but that 3rd and 11 was frustrating. However, all for nothing, because the Texans end up getting off the field on a Will Anderson sack. DeMeco actually being aggressive, trying to get points. So then you have Stefon Diggs for 16 yards. And then I don't know. I'm not like Mr. Offensive line coach, but this was literally a stunt that they run in Pee Wee football, where the linebacker is just behind the end, boom, and then he just goes inside right up the middle. It works. It gets the Texans off the field, and they go into the locker room down 14-0 with a lot of missed opportunity. And quite frankly, this was one of those games where I actually felt like the Texans were lucky to be just down 14-0. Sometimes you feel like, man, this should be this way or that way. I actually felt like they were lucky that they were down just 14.
Well, at halftime, it's pretty easy to see how you get back in the game, because the Texans defense had allowed one sustained drive to Minnesota at that point. Now they take over in that first play, or that first defensive series right there in the red zone, basically, because of the interception. So like, okay, but one sustained drive to Minnesota in the first half. Minnesota marched down the field, made it 14-0. Okay. So one sustained drive. And then they forced 3 punts, and you're like, okay, like they've got a little bit of momentum. So stop, score, and you're right back in this thing. And so it's like, okay, like you see the path to getting back in the game at halftime. Like it could have been way worse, and there's a way to get back into this thing.
Derek asks who played well. It's hard. I don't think it's hard. I think all the receivers played well. They took advantage of their opportunities. I don't think you can say that any of the receivers played bad. So I would say Diggs played well. I would say Nico when he got the opportunity. Tank when he got the opportunity. Tim Settle played good. He seemed to be getting back there. Maybe Will Anderson, although there was a little bit of inconsistency with the tackling, but that's who I would say played good for the Texans. Probably stop around there.
It ultimately didn't end up costing them costing them because I think they forced the punt, but man, Caleb Bullock and Stingley running into each other, costing the Texans interception stunk.
Yeah, Stingley kind of flung his arms back a little bit. So then we go to the first drive, and this is where Kevin O'Connell just completely schools DeMeco. Now, this was also an extremely frustrating drive. I called this the most frustrating drive ever. So you have Naylor. First, there's just and I'll just lay this out. First, you have like the prototypical ass whooping from the offense. Naylor, wide ass open for 18 yards. Naylor again on a rollout. And then this is where you kind of knew, okay, they're not getting back into this game.
Not the Texans' day.
A backwards pass from Sam Darnold that should have been probably a loss of 5 or 6 ends up being a gain of 7 or 8 for the Minnesota Vikings. The only guy within 30 yards of the receiver when this was thrown backwards was Khalil Davis. Khalil Davis has no chance in the open field. So the backward pass turns into 7 yards. Then they run a trick play. The defense actually sniffs it out. Jalen Petrie, for whatever reason, just decides he's going to grab the guy when he's right there. And then Naylor gets the touchdown, and they go up 21-0. So you have a play that is completely going to end the drive, the backwards pass, and it ends up being a 7-yard gain.
Yeah, that's that. In all likelihood, that should have been, at the very least, that ball most of the time rolls out of it. But they just happen to have a guy there, and he not only does he pick it up to save it from getting recovered by the Texans because Barnett forced the fumble. Not only does he pick it up, he runs it for a 7-yard gain.
Tyler, come on, dude. Like, let's be serious, dude.
I mean,
if that wasn't pass interference, then I don't know what to tell you.
I can't figure out what he was doing with his hands the whole time.
Yeah, that was clearly pass interference. You don't think that was PI? Come on, dude. Sports talk.
I thought it was a pretty soft call.
Really?
I thought it was a pretty soft call.
He's grabbing his jersey.
I didn't see him grabbing the jersey.
He pulled his jersey.
I saw
2 hands.
I saw his hands on him, but I didn't see him.
And then he grabs down. You can see the name coming down. He grabbed down. Come on, dude. Good Lord. Sports talk with D seems to me like the O-line. We're talking about D-line. Okay. But yeah, that was I thought it was interference. They go down 21-0. You kind of wonder, okay, is there some CJ magic here? But then the offensive line gets dominated again. This time, Jonathan Grenard just right in front of Shaq Mason, and he just completely blows by him. Sack CJ Stroud, 3rd and 16. You have the dump off and then the punt. So Shaq Mason, it's this was probably the low light for Shaq Mason's season right there. Jonathan Grenard just coming just right over the top of him.
I mean, I don't get it.
Then the defense keeps the prayer alive. You're still kind of living on a prayer. Tim Settle with his 2nd sack. He's going to be loving himself in the locker room this week. Tim Settle loves to chat. And then you get a hands to the face. This was kind of a breath of fresh air because I think mentally it's got to be nice for the Texans for there to be a penalty and them say it's on the purple team instead of you. There's got to be like some sort of soothing there. So there's a hands to the face penalty on Minnesota, gives you a fresh first down. Tank Dell goes for 20, Nico for 34. And then Stroud finds Akers to make it 21-7. And you're thinking, okay, you got a chance. Okay. It's back to the 2-possession game. No harm, no foul. We get a fresh start. the offense has gotten clicking. They finally found the end zone, and then Kaimi Fairbairn just sucks the life out of it before it even starts. Kicks it out of bounds so Minnesota gets the ball at the 40. We talk about the missed field goal. Not only did Kaimi Fairbairn cost you 3 points, he killed the only taste of momentum that the Texans had in this game by kicking the ball out of effing bounds.
I will be interested to ask Frank Ross on Thursday if that was a called play or if that was Kaimi kicking it that way.
Kick it out of the damn end zone every freaking time, man.
If that's a called play, that's the wrong time to try that. That is the absolute wrong time to try that.
So he kicks it out of bounds. Then you have a near Petrie interception. He gets one hand on it. If he were Justin Simmons or something, like that would have been like a game-changing play, and you're down one possession. He's just not Justin Simmons. Even when he's in the right place, he's not going to make that play. So
how'd Simmons do yesterday?
He intercepted Patrick Mahomes for the 900th time of his career, I think. So you had the near Petrie interception. Then there was I think the Petrie call was a pass interference. You had a roughing the passer on Danielle Hunter that was garbage. And look, I get it why you call it. We know what it's like with a quarterback, but this is the way that I can put it when it comes to that penalty. He got pushed in the back into Sam Darnold, and he ended up hitting Sam Darnold's knees. So if Sam Darnold were returning a punt and Danielle Hunter ran into him, they would not call kick catch interference because he was pushed into him. So I get that you want to protect the quarterback, but when Danielle Hunter's going full speed and he's about to hit you in the shoulders, and the offensive lineman at 300 plus pounds pushes you down into the quarterback's knees, I know the NFL is never going to get to a point where they pick up roughing the passer penalties, but there's literally nothing Danielle Hunter can do in that situation. So I want to say it's a BS call. We know how it is with quarterbacks, so I get that you have to call it, but there's literally nothing Danielle Hunter could have done in that situation. Nothing.
Well, and I just want, and this is, we talk about this all the time with roughing the passer calls. Like, there just needs to be some level of consistency to it. Tim Settle had Darnold in an ankle lock like he was Kurt Angle earlier in the game, and there was no flag. I watching the game, there were plenty of times there was messiness at both quarterbacks' feet, including guys running into them, knocking them down, and no flags come out. And then on that one, a flag comes out. That was another soft penalty. This was Hockley for being looking like a hardo, as you like to say. I mean, he sure has a soft crew.
And Sports Talk with D, the super chat to correct yourself. I appreciate that. I meant they were tackling the D line. Okay. So then you have another one here. And this one was kind of a little bit frustrating too, because Sam Darnold had a shovel pass that was like vintage Sam Darnold. And this was on 2nd down and 10. I think he ended up picking up like 6 yards on it. Mario Edwards, on the play that Sam Darnold returns, he literally gets tackled by the guard. And it was actually a smart play by the guard, because your quarterback just limped off. He went into the tent and he's coming back in, and Mario Edwards is about to eat his lunch. Go back and watch the Sam Darnold shovel pass after this. The guard is taking the penalty. Like, the guard is literally saying, I'm not going to get the quarterback hurt. I just saw him get hurt. I'm going to tackle this guy and prevent him from getting his 3rd stack in 3 weeks. And they didn't call it. So instead of 2nd and 20, you get 3rd and 4, and the Vikings get a touchdown, but it gets taken away by offensive pass interference. So kind of cancel out there, I guess. But then on 3rd and 3, this one could have been worse. Jalen Petrie actually gets beat by Jefferson badly. He drops the ball, and the Vikings take the 3-possession lead. And they kick the field goal and they go up 24-3. And this all started with Fairbairn kicking the ball out of bounds and the Danielle Hunter penalty.
This did not feel like the Vikings offense had like solved the Texans defense. Like it still felt like there was still like that Sam Darnold, like, oh crap moments. Like it didn't feel like they had just like totally figured some things out. But the fact that this thing starts at their 40 because you kicked it out of bounds, if this thing starts at the 30 and you got, maybe 10 yards and it changes the way they operate, or maybe if you're going to try to force them to return it, maybe you go out there and make a play and they start at the 20 or the 25, like gets a little bit, it's just, it was a dumb play to call, that special teams play. They kick it out of bounds. And then you had some tough moments here, crappy penalty on Hunter.
Yeah.
No call on the hold.
I probably wouldn't have called the PI either on the touchdown, honestly. I think that just kind of happens. I know they're running pick plays, but I probably wouldn't have called that. So I thought it kind of canceled out the
I'd like to see
on the tackle.
I'd like to see a little bit of that in the Texans offense. How about you run Cade Stover over the middle, let him, blow up a cornerback, and Stefon Diggs starts running free? Like, how come the Texans don't run stuff like that? Same tree.
Tillery hit Stroud in the face, no call.
Yep, that was one. That was another one.
So yeah, then you're unable to get anything going, and really you just get gashed, and then the assing gets activated as the Vikings take a 31-3 lead, and they never really look back.
And the rushing attack for the Vikings looks better because Jones has that late big run. They did an okay job trying to make the Vikings one-dimensional. It just so happened that the dimension that they were, it ended up being a pretty successful dimension. It's just really, really poor performance in a lot of ways. Can we talk about the coverage now? Can we talk about the way like Kevin O'Connell just saw the way DeMeco Ryans was playing his best receiver and just found ways to get him the ball?
Yeah, I mean,
what is Derek Stingley? Like is Derek Stingley awesome? Because if he's awesome, like why can't? Because the Vikings guys are not good. Like the Vikings don't have a Derek Stingley. But you know what those guys were doing when the Texans were lined up, and the Texans have the Texans have 3 times the amount of good wide receivers that the Vikings do. Okay, so you know what they were doing? They were this far away from those guys, and they were in their face the whole time. And CJ Stroud had a couple of moments where coverage forced him to scramble in addition to the pressure. And then Sam Darnold's sitting back there, and Darnold's got this nice on the 3rd down in the red zone on the first drive. Derek Stingley has 9 yards of cushion on Justin Jefferson. If Derek Stingley's supposed to have all pro level talent, why does he need 9 yards of cushion on Justin Jefferson? And it's like, okay, you want to tell me it's the red zone? You don't want to give up a touchdown? Okay. Then why on 3rd and super long does he have another big cushion? And Jefferson runs right past the sticks. Ball's right there. Like, what are we doing? You just watched the 49ers be soft on him the previous week. You just watched it. And they were soft on coverage all day. Like, Kamari Lassiter's this dog. Man him up with Jalen Naylor. Who the hell's Jalen Naylor? How does he kick your ass? Like if Jordan Addison does it, Jordan Addison goes 120 miles an hour on you. I get it. Jalen Naylor? Come on. You got these guys, and we all these Pro Football Focus stats and the advanced stats, and it's, the passer rating when you throw it, Kamari Lassiter is 0. The passer rating when you throw it, Derek Stingley is this. Well, you know what? The completion percentage when you give a 25-yard cushion to Justin Jefferson was 100 yesterday. What are they doing?
Well, and it was actually worse than the actual results. Like as frustrated as you are, like there were 3 or 4 plays that I think Justin Jefferson makes in his sleep. Like I don't think Justin Jefferson's leaving that game saying, "Man, I played awesome." Like there was a 3rd down where he could have turned upfield. I don't know how long he goes where he burned Petrie. There was a long pass that he just flat out dropped, and then there was another one where he got free. So we always like to go beyond the box score. The assing, I thought you brought up a good point about the run game. I think there can be like some misleading statistics when it comes to the run game, just based on that long ass run when the game was already pretty much over and the Texans were basically against the ropes. But the pass game, I think, is even worse than the D- or F, whatever the hell they got. That could have been a even way worse than it was.
Yeah, there were some certainly some disappointing moments with the approach defensively, and the first 2 weeks you and look, Darnold with the touchdown pass to Jefferson to get things started. I don't know. You watch that play a few times. Did the defensive line do exactly what they were supposed to do? It looked like somebody vacated an area they weren't supposed to vacate. But at the same time, Eric Murray falls down trying to cover Jefferson. Why is Eric Murray on Jefferson? And I know they move him around.
What do you mean? Why is he on Jefferson? Like at some point, the starting safety is gonna come across the wide receiver. I know it's ideal, but I always hear, why is Jalen Petrie guarding Jefferson? Why is Eric Murray guarding Jefferson? Because Kevin O'Connell knows how to seek it out. Like if you, the safety position is not new, and that's what we go back to on this. When it comes to the Texans, it is Reaction Monday. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots. Look, man, like we were talking about running back depth, and we were talking about safety all year, like all offseason. Like Justin Simmons, that was the popular topic. So if you're expecting Eric Murray to just be able to avoid Justin Jefferson or whatever wide receiver they end up playing, it's not going to happen. He's your starting safety. Jalen Petrie is basically your starting nickel. He's basically a linebacker. So these coaches are going to be able to sniff that out at some point. So why is he out there? He's out there because the Texans told us that they were okay with Jalen Petrie and Eric Murray being their safeties that were going to be on the field a long time. That's why. You can't every play be like, you got to move. You got to like at some point, hopefully it's not frequent. Jalen Petrie is going to have to be in coverage, which can be a game-changing play. And Eric Murray, as a result of Jalen Petrie being close to the line of scrimmage, he's the guy that you said, not Justin Simmons, not Quandre Diggs. He is the guy that you said we feel comfortable about starting at safety. So you don't even have to ask those questions, Cody, because they decided to make it that way.
Well, by the way, he was with him the whole way through until Darnold scrambled, and then it's a scramble
It
drill.
doesn't matter if these guys are with him. Like that. That's the problem with safeties. Like that you can be there, but you got to make the play. Jimmy Ward's been there 3 times this year, and he hasn't made the play. So that's why safeties are so important, because you're either so bad that you're not even there, but once you're there, it's even more difficult because you have to make the effing play. Like Jalen Petrie, we looked at that play where he tipped the ball and said, wow, that was nice. That was a good play. Really, really good safeties, they get their hand on that, and all of a sudden, somehow the soft hands, you get a chance to make a play. You're not getting that. You're not getting that with Jalen Petrie. You're getting some good play near the line of scrimmage, but as far as game-breaking, game-changing plays from a safety, that's not happening here. It's not going to happen. They decided they were fine with just okay. And just okay is not going to make a play that's going to flip around a complete assing on the road. You need those type of fluke plays. You need that we're down 21-7. Jalen Petrie just intercepted a pass and gave us the rock inside the 40-yard line. Some people will say, well, that's a tough play to make. It is. But good safeties make tough plays. They don't even make routine plays. Jimmy Ward was right there. Jimmy Ward was begging for the refs to say that guy dropped the ball. You actually, like, you could probably take some of the plays that Jimmy Ward has failed to make, and you could actually use them on a coaching clinic tape and say, this is what you want to do, but you got to turn it off when the ball's in the air because he's there. But be sure to turn it off once the ball's on the air, because there's a whole nother element of it. They chose to stay at safety. There's some stuff that we watch and we say, well, this is kind of a development. And then we'll be like, well, we felt good about this a few weeks ago, and now this is what it looks like. Like Cade Stover going out there and getting his ass whooped and getting physically dominated. We didn't even like mention that with Brevin Jordan. So that's like kind of a new development of the fluid process. The safety thing's nothing new. There's nothing new about this safety thing. That's what they signed up for. That's what we've been talking about all offseason.
All right, so they're just going to suck at safety, or they need to play Bullock more? I mean, it feels like he's around stuff, at least.
I mean, I think they're going to have to balance it out, but I think he deserves a larger chunk of the pie. He's at least, I mean, he's there. I mean, he's making plays that can turn around games like this.
Like he was
Eric
in
Murray's not
position to
going to do that.
I mean,
Here's another thing. Go ahead, Stoots. There's something. I'm sorry. I don't know how healthy he is. But at this point, with what his role is in the offense, and I'm not even complaining about it. Maybe it's evening out. I need Tank Dell returning punts. I'm over this. I'm over this Steven Sims thing. I'd put Tank Dell back there. Let's get the ball in his hands. If he needs to fair catch it, that's fine. If he needs to run sideways for -3 yards or 2 yards like Steven Sims, that's fine. But with the limitations on this team at this point, I'm over the Steven Sims thing. I'm over watching Steven Sims return punts. It's cool. He's a good dude, blah, blah, blah. Put Tank Dell back there, please. I want Tank Dell returning punts. He's not getting as many targets as the other receivers. We'll see if his hand's okay. It kind of got banged up. He said he's going to be fine. We'll see when the injury report drops. But give me Tank Dell back there at punt return. I'm over the Steven Sims thing.
I have no notes on that one. I mean, it's maybe one of the only ways you can consistently affect field position, because the offense is inconsistent. They're not affecting field position every time. They're affecting it negatively, actually, sometimes.
Daniel Swarm in the super chat.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
What's most discouraging is a lot of these problems we've seen since week 1, and there doesn't seem to be any quick fix. Yeah, I don't know if there's a quick fix for some of these things.
Well, what Landry talked about with the safeties is, I mean, that's a February problem. Like, that's a February problem that they've, I guess the way that they've decided to address it is Kalen Bullock, and it's like, okay, maybe that's good enough. Maybe it's not. And then some of the offensive line issues, like Landry, we watched every training camp practice. Now I think we know why Foley Fatukasi and Mario Edwards looked like monsters out there. Now we know it, and I don't want to take away.
We were on watch there. We were on watch there though about that.
Like I don't want to take away like what Edwards has done through a couple of games.
No, but they look like Warren Sapp and John Randall at times.
They yeah, exactly. Like it looked disgusting out there sometimes, and I'm like, okay, well, hopefully those guys are just awesome, and it's not the interior offensive line. Wrong. It's the interior offensive line. They
Curtis Main, super chat. DeMeco's game plan showed zero respect to Darnold. Really? Like, I don't know. I didn't look at you could probably say Jefferson and maybe the Vikings receivers. I think Sam Darnold played good. I mean,
here's what we know now about the Minnesota Vikings. They've got a unique, highly talented offensive mind running their system and running their organization. And Kevin O'Connell has been able to minimize all the bad crap that Sam Darnold does, maximize what he can do, keep him from doing things where you go, what the hell was that? And then the Texans didn't put enough heat on Sam Darnold yesterday to force him into some of those, what the hell was that? Like, you saw it after the second touchdown, they didn't allow another score until coming out of the first half. And even then, it took a pass interference on a trick play to get them into the red zone. Like, the defense had its moments, and within those moments, you saw how you could heat up Sam Darnold and make things very difficult for him. But that wasn't consistent enough over the course of the game, and you played some off coverage and let Justin Jefferson do some things. And DeMeco Ryans' explanation for that after the game was, well, Justin Jefferson's really good. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I know he's really good. Maybe you should put your really good corner on him and let him try to defend him.
Yeah. Is there an easier said than done element to this, you think? I mean, I'm just asking.
I'd rather go down with my best chance to win than try something that doesn't feel like it's going to work. Like Derek Stingley's supposed to be awesome. Why can't he man up Justin Jefferson? It's because he has trouble with big receivers? Because Cortland Sutton got him a couple of years ago? Like, is that what they're worried about?
Yeah.
It was, and the thing is the disappointment builds on itself. So like, even when the defense has a couple of nice moments, Well, you still remember the really crappy moments, like a pass interference, or you keep drives alive, or this or that. Like they had a couple of nice moments. It just, they needed to be excellent. They weren't excellent, and you lose the football game.
Here's one of the things that I found a little bit frustrating and like kind of browsing around after the O. And I guess the most encouraging thing you can say is that the Texans are in the AFC South. I think that's great.
Woke up this morning in first place.
Yeah, woke up in first place, and Jacksonville could very well lose today. But Tennessee, the Titans' offensive line sucks. Let's just do a little side by side here. This is the Titans' offensive line speaking on their struggles.
It's a good way to describe it. It's like a waterfall. It starts with our group not being efficient and not going 3 and out, giving them the ball back, giving them chances to score. And that starts with the run game and not being efficient there, and then getting behind the sticks and getting in those third and long, those pass down situations. And then when we get in those situations, we still got to block. You can't just say, "Oh, well, these situations suck." We deserve every bit of shit that's coming towards us, and there'll be a lot of it. And we're not going to point fingers around anywhere. It's this 5, and we've got to be better. And that's that. 8 sacks is never, ever, ever excusable in any sense sort of word. So we're going to be better.
All right, so there you go.
So
now let's go to Titus Howard.
We didn't do well enough. We're not going to point fingers. Like those are the two things.
Any crap we're going to get
that I got out of that from second-year guard Peter Skoronski. Okay, second-year guard on a crappy organization in a crappy team. Second-year guard Peter Skoronski. Now we got Titus Howard.
We had one call the first 2 weeks. So, we line up the same way we line up the first 2 weeks tonight. And then it was just some reason tonight they were like, all right, we're just going to call them. But it was just inconsistent.
What were they saying it was?
Saying got to be up further on the line. But then again, the next play, you'll be in the same spot. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're good. So, I don't know. That's tough. That's tough. So, I just moved up further as I could. And then I looked at the guy and he was like, are you good? So I was like, I'm lined up even with the center now. So, if that's what I got to do, I got to do it. But, it's definitely something that, we're going to have to work with the NFL with. Because, it's a problem all around the league for all tackles having to move up so far on the line of scrimmage. And it becomes a problem on the road games when you're on silent count and then guys getting out the ball before you get a can because you're so far up. So it's just something got to work.
All right, there you go. So, yeah, there's a little bit of a difference there.
Biggest game that the Falcons have played in a long time. They had a sold-out stadium last night. That place was freaking rocking, and they got a third-round pick from last year playing left tackle. He didn't have any problems on the road last year. And here's the thing, Landry, like they had 2 illegal formations. So, and that was they had 3 called, 2 accepted. That was bad. It wiped off positive plays. Okay. Is Titus Howard sitting here telling me he had to line up closer to the center, and that's the reason he couldn't pass block? Is that what he's telling me? Because the head coach went to the podium after the game and said, we have to take ownership of it. And then Titus Howard says, yeah, the league made me line up closer to the center, so I couldn't get deep enough, and those guys get off the snap. You know the snap count. How do they beat you? By the way, Drew Scruggs just olayed a guy in the middle of just absolutely. He snaps the freaking football, and the guy just blows past him because he knows the snap count. That's terrible. And to top this off, Titus Howard's doing this because he's parroting what Laramie Tunsil says, which is the NFL sought us out.
This is exactly this is repeating Laramie Tunsil. Like when you see like a lot of the players kind of repeat what CJ says, you can kind of see it throughout the locker room. This is, I got a target on my back when Laramie Tunsil was getting false starts 3 years ago. The famous quote, I just got a target on my back. This is repeating exactly what Laramie Tunsil says right here.
So here are the two Tunsil quotes. Tunsil on false starts. False starts. I want people to understand we all have to be on the same communication. I'll take accountability because they're calling my name, but it takes all of us.
Okay.
That's Laramie Tunsil on false starts. Laramie Tunsil on illegal formation calls. They tried to make an example out of us. The first 2 weeks we lined up the same with no problem. Now it's a problem. I feel like somebody told them to make an example out of us.
How?
Got to call it the same, both sides.
But here's my thing. Like, how do you make an example of this? How many people watched Texans Vikings yesterday? Like, it was a noon slate game. Like, how many? Like, it's not like this was on Monday night or Sunday night or something like that. Like, what did they say? I didn't even. How does that make sense? I don't even think I watched Football Night in America. I watched the NFL show this morning. They didn't even mention this, so I don't know how does that work? How does that conspiracy theory work?
Dude, don't line up in St. Paul and they won't call it. Like, he was in the other Twin City. If he looked right, he wouldn't have seen an offensive lineman. Like, what are we talking about? They made an example out of you. They called a penalty because you were in another city when you lined up. And I just can't get over the fact that on pre-snap penalties, the head coach at the podium says, we have to take accountability. Here's DeMeco Ryans' exact words about pre-snap penalties. The pre-snap penalties, it's all self-inflicted, so we have to take ownership of it. First and foremost, we have to take ownership of it. Titus Howard, Laramie Tunsil, the NFL screwed us. It's not my fault on the false starts as Laramie Tunsil. Okay. Well, it's not your fault. Communication. You're the captain. Make it work. Make the other four guys follow you. Titus clearly follows you. He's saying the same thing that you said. The conspiracy theory that the NFL is out to get the Houston Texans because they had such an amazing pass blocking performance against the freaking Chicago Bears on Sunday Night Football. They had to go get them.
Yeah.
Hold on. Where's the tinfoil hat, Laramie? Laramie Tunsil's tinfoil hat.
Shower cap?
It's a tinfoil hat.
Oh, okay. But do you have a shower cap?
No, I don't know exactly what this is used for. Someone sent it to me because
I think that's a shower cap.
I used to put legitimately tinfoil on my head, but then someone sent me this because it's easier to get on and off.
Yeah, that's a shower cap. I can see you as a shower cap, dude.
It's a tinfoil hat.
Okay.
I mean, this is conspiracy theory Laramie. The NFL's out to get the Houston Texans. If they had been awesome against the Bears, maybe I'd listen. You sucked against the Bears too.
Dude, it wasn't nobody's watching you like that. Like I know that Laramie's like a real business savvy dude that he plays when it comes to managing things off the field and stuff, he does it right. Nobody's watching you, man. Like, we're watching you locally, but around the league, if they wanted to make an example, they would have done it yesterday with the Chiefs Falcons. They would have done it with the Cowboys Ravens. This was just a noon game, and 75% of the country was not invested at all in this game. All they did, the only example that was made was the Texans offensive line stinks. That's all. Any of my out-of-town friends, man, that O-line sucks would be what I got. It wasn't, man, y'all really got to learn to line up on the line of scrimmage. No, because you lose. Here's the thing. You lose credibility for that whenever you're also getting all these false start penalties. So it's not necessarily an example. Like, if you go into a store and you steal a candy bar, and then you go back into the store, they're going to be looking at you a little bit more closely. So if anything, maybe they're just so used to flagging you that they look a little bit closer naturally. But I don't think there's any conspiracy theory here that the NFL is trying to make an example. Omar, he's swarming the super chat like a mofo.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
I'd bench Tunsil for a drive or two next week. I don't know how that would go over.
They're not benching Laramie right now, and they're not benching Titus right now. And maybe later in the season they'll give Fisher a shot in Titus's spot, but neither of those guys are getting benched this week against Jacksonville. What do you think? So when DeMeco Ryans talks this afternoon, and I ask him about the conspiracy theory from Laramie Tunsil, what do you think he's going to say? Is he going to agree with his player?
No, I hope not. I mean, he's gonna be generic and be like, "Yeah, we got to be better at it," and it starts with me, and I gotta go out there and
how I think this is very much an offensive line issue and not a not a Bobby Slowick issue, because I know some people try to put some of this stuff on Slowick. When I asked Slowick about some of the other like rule changes, he was like, we got to know the rules. We got to make sure we don't have the rules work against us and stuff like that. Like Bobby Slowick's not telling this guy to line up in St. Paul when they're playing in Minneapolis. Like, it's just, that's a Tunsil thing. Does he need has the knee bothering him again? Has the play dropped off? Does he need the extra 2 steps to stop whoever the hell that guy was that was not Jonathan Grenard? They didn't even have Dallas Turner. My God, if they'd had Dallas Turner, what would have happened to this team?
I have a question. Where is DeMeco in the blame game from yesterday? I would say Kevin O'Connell completely schooled his defense. So I would say there's that issue. But what more can DeMeco do? And we'll ask this about CJ as well. What more can DeMeco do to avoid stuff like this? Because his mannerisms, the passionate, I don't want to say obnoxious, because I respect all of y'all's emotions in here. That's what we're here for. But the passionate, like, intense fan probably likes that Antonio Pierce, after their embarrassing performance, goes out there and says, we had players making business decisions. And, we got to figure some stuff out. There was certain people that were a little bit frustrated in the chat yesterday in the post game that just want DeMeco to get a little bit more pissed off. If that's what you want, that's never going to happen. So that's, if that's what you want in a coach, it's not going to happen. I think DeMeco, does the offensive line need to be called out if they're saying stuff like this? I don't know what DeMeco does behind the scenes, but I just don't know how a guy like DeMeco Ryans or a guy like CJ Stroud, who functions the way that they function, I don't know how they're okay with what Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil are saying right now. They might be. And maybe that's just the kind of pull that there is there. And I know that Laramie and CJ are tight, but I've seen CJ Stroud go up to podiums and speak for his coaches after the best performance of his life. I've seen CJ Stroud go up after getting flung to the ground 6 times with a hurt shoulder against the Colts and praise the efforts of the offensive line. I've seen CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans both take the blame when we all knew that neither one of them was to blame. So with that said, these are the 2 faces of the franchise. I just don't see how it might not be something that you call out publicly, although it was said publicly. I just don't, it's hard for me to believe that these 2 guys that I believe in very much with this Texans organization and the 2 guys that we think can eventually take the Texans to the promised land, it's hard for me to believe that they really co-sign and cut for what Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil are saying after the performance that those guys put out yesterday.
That's where we really find out about DeMeco Ryans, to an extent, like you said about CJ Stroud, because it doesn't get fixed in the 25 minutes after the game when DeMeco Ryans is at the podium. It gets fixed against Jacksonville and Buffalo and whoever else is on the schedule. So, like, I'll tell you this. The chances of DeMeco Ryans going to the podium and ripping an individual player or even an individual unit is going to be non-existent. Like, he's not going to do that at the podium.
Yeah, I just hope he's doing it behind the scenes, because that's ridiculous.
But that doesn't mean that he's going to allow it to continue to occur behind the scenes. Like, if you don't, he coaches these guys hard. Like, publicly at the podium, you're not going to get, hey, this guy didn't play well. But I guarantee you, when they're in team meeting, he's saying, hey, this can't happen. Stop doing this. Get better. Do this. What do we need to do to help you get better? Like, I have a belief in DeMeco Ryans, because Bill O'Brien was all bluster at the podium and then didn't follow through with anything. O'Brien would say all the control what you control, and then he would go and try to control so many things that he didn't control. So it's like, I believe when DeMeco Ryans says, hey, we're going to coach it better, we're going to get better, like, I believe it. And we saw improvement last year from where they started to where they finished. So, like, I believe him, even though he's not standing there saying, hey, my $700 million left tackle is not good enough today.
979 H-Town fan says our prima donna offensive lineman would crater emotionally if called out. Look, I don't know. I just hope that DeMeco is at least addressing that in some way, shape, or form. It's not going to happen with us. That's not his style. That's not how he's built. I don't think he thinks that it would happen well. Do it. I don't know that it would. I don't know that it would. There would be much of a payoff. I think the next time that we hear Titus Howard or Laramie Tunsil speak, I think we hear a look. There's no excuses. We got to be better. We got to line up, and we're hurting the team. I think that will be the best way to measure what DeMeco Ryans says. I want to ask you this though: do you think all 5 of these offensive linemen are just safe? Like, is there any scenario where we do see someone benched or like some sort of movement? Because we sit here and we both acknowledge, and it is one game. We'll move on to the next. I mean, this is not going to be, that this is what Reaction Monday is for. But do you think that all 5 of these offensive linemen are just in the lineup no matter what? And
okay.
give me the likelihood 1 to 3 of guys that you could see getting replaced.
So will not get benched. Will only be out of the lineup if he's injured as Laramie Tunsil. That's a category all by himself.
Yeah.
He as long as he's healthy, he's starting. He's playing. Okay. So then it comes to the other 4 guys. I would tell you the likelihood of Titus Howard getting benched right now is really low. He has the best replacement of the guys that could come in and take his job. Like the best backup is behind him, but it's still really low.
Okay.
I would tell you that there's a chance Scruggs is sat down until he's healthy.
Okay.
He's the most likely.
Okay.
The problem is the guy behind him that's number 2 on the depth chart didn't even make the trip because he's hurt. So now you go to are you going to start the number 3 center? You believe he's the number 2 center, Kendrick Green. So like Scruggs to me is the guy that's most likely because A, he's not healthy. I think he's playing through the injury and it's drastically affecting his play. And then I would tell you the next guy is Shaq Mason, not Kenyon Green. I feel like Kenyon's had more positive moments than Shaq has this year. And I don't know if it's take a break, let's give you a week, or, are you actually feeling good, Shaq, or do you need a week off? Like
there's just like a different vibe with the offensive line in this locker room. And I'm not sitting here saying that there's like cliques or anything like that, but it's just, it seems like there's the young guys that kind of sound like DeMeco, that kind of have that type of mindset. And then the offensive line, there's like, it's almost like a completely different area. And that happens a lot in football. But like last year, DeMeco had no problem benching Jalen Petrie. Jalen Petrie's his favorite guy. Like he's his favorite guy in that locker room. Maybe. I mean, he at least makes the list. Like he loves Jalen Petrie. He had no problem benching him last year. CJ Stroud as a rookie, like CJ Stroud had like a corny ass quarterback competition with Davis Mills. It took a little while for CJ to be announced the quarterback. We didn't really see that with the offensive line this year. Like there was zero competition. Like the number 1 offensive line was set in stone and Blake Fisher was out there immediately. So there just seems to be like a different feel with the offensive line as a whole when it comes to the way this goes. But again,
they walk around like they're the damn Eagles, like, or the Lions. Like they walk around like they've done some great stuff out there. And it's like, that ain't it, man. Like that ain't it. You know why Penei Sewell makes a lot of money? Because he's really good and he shows up every week and he doesn't blame the NFL when stuff doesn't go right. You know why Taylor Decker makes a lot of money? It's because he's really good and he shows up every week. You know why Lane Johnson is one of the most respected offensive linemen in football? A, because he plays through injuries and he doesn't just sit down every time he feels hurt. And B, he's really damn good when he does play. Like they walk around like they're the best offensive line in football and they ain't done nothing yet. They ain't proven anything.
Like a dynamic that I think is interesting with the Texans coaching staff, and we'll take a big picture look in a sec. It is Reaction Monday. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots, the 2 top digital beat reporters in the game, best radio voice, best written word right there. So you got it all here. Enough patting ourselves on the back. The dynamic between Slowick, DeMeco, and walking into this locker room and seeing, and I'm not saying it's wrong or whatever, but it is what it is. We know how it is. Watching how Laramie Tunsil functions versus how Trent Williams functions. It's got to be kind of funny. Because Trent Williams will fight your ass. Like Trent Williams is out there nasty, like straight nasty. I think Trent Williams is like just cut from a cloth. That's Longview right there, baby. That's shout out to Longview, Texas. Shout out to Malcolm Kelly. That's just like a hard mofo. Doesn't get like there are not very many business decisions, although he did hold out this year, but when he's on a football field and he's ready to go, Trent Williams is about that life. The mindset between Trent Williams and Laramie Tunsil is just very different. It's a very different dynamic.
Well, and just the consistency in the performance too. Like, you want to know what a franchise left tackle really looks like? Watch the guy in purple yesterday. Darisaw, fantastic. He had a moment here or there, but I mean, he's not false starting. He's not lining up wrong. He got paid a bunch of money in the offseason. He's grown into the position. Really good. Really good. Just it's not good enough. And you know what, Landry? I don't do this. This is a baseball season thing. When like like a team can't hit for 3 weeks and everybody wants to fire the hitting coach.
Oh no, don't go O-line coach, please.
I'm the biggest Chris Strausser fan there is.
How many offensive lineman coaches do they need?
Well, how about somebody that's coached this system before?
Yeah.
I like the guy. He's nice. He answers every question.
Every O-line coach. Good God.
You can't change the players out. It costs $50 million to get rid of Laramie Tunsil. You can't do that. So you got to find somebody that they'll listen to. God.
Fire the O-line coach, man. That I didn't think you were going there, man.
I'm not there yet, but it's on the radar.
All right, so here's the next question. What more can CJ Stroud do? I really don't think a lot. Like, honestly, I want to sit here. 2 interceptions, not good. The final one, the game was pretty much over. He was trying to make a play. He threw it behind Nico. He immediately took the blame for it. The first one was tipped at the line of scrimmage. It was after he threw a 16-yard pass to start the game to Nico Collins. That completely threw stuff off. The offensive line, we've talked about the offensive line. They're not running the ball. I don't know what more CJ Stroud is supposed to do in these types of situations. We'll get to games where we can like closely evaluate, but in this situation, I have a hard time criticizing the quarterback when some of his best efforts were just completely pissed away.
I mean, if you're asking more out of CJ Stroud, what do you want him to do? You want him to be 2006 Michael Vick? You want him to run for 1,000 yards? Like, that's the only thing that's left is if he turns into Michael Vick, right-handed Michael Vick. Like, this is not a situation that is sustainable for success. Like, you're going to beat, like we saw it for 2 weeks, you're going to beat some bad teams. The Bears are awful, by the way. The Bears suck. Like, they are really bad. Like really bad. The Colts aren't much better. Their quarterback terrible again yesterday. But the Bears suck. And to have to squeak it out against the Bears, like, that's not good. Like, you're going to beat some bad teams. Jacksonville may be one of them coming into town next week.
Could be 0-3.
But you're going to you play like this a few more times over the course of the year, you're going to get your head kicked in a couple of times, just like you did yesterday. Like, the Bills will get you. The Packers probably get you. The Jets and Lions probably get you. Like, there's a lot of games that if you play like that, you're not only taking a loss, you're licking your wounds like we're talking about today coming out of those games. So
Derek says 2 sacks were O-line related. This is the danger of this. And it kind of feels like Derek's kind of defending the offensive line effort, and he's acting like the Vikings got one of the best D-lines of all time. Here's the problem I have with that. This is one of the highest paid offensive lines in the NFL. The Vikings can get handled. And the other thing is, if you're going to get in the business of, and I'm not picking on you, Derek, we're just talking ball here, so don't get too upset. If you're going to get in the business of counting sacks that were not O-line related, then I want you to sprinkle in the times that CJ Stroud gets away from pressure where most quarterbacks would have been sacked. I mean, that's a dangerous business to get into if it's the business you want to get in. I would recommend just watching the game. And if you think that the offensive line was okay, then I respect the opinion. I think you address the penalties, but if you're going to get in that business, I think there's a lot of plays that CJ Stroud makes where there would have been a sack. So I just think that's kind of a hard balance when evaluating this offensive line.
And here's another tough part about not only the financial investment and the draft pick investment that you've made in this offensive line. This is the O-line that they have wanted to put on the field since March of 2023. This is the O-line that they have wanted for 18 months. This is exactly who they wanted to be on the field for 18 months.
And that's the thing where it was like, and we kind of talked about this it was, well, the offensive line is going to be really good. Why? Because they were hurt last year. Okay. That doesn't matter. Like they might not play well. It's like, and I use this example all the time with you, Cody. You and I were both big magazine guys back in the day. You like Penthouse and the other stuff, the other stuff that I can't say.
What you're thinking of is Maxim. Big Maxim guy.
Nah, you're a Penthouse.
And clearly Men's Fitness. I'm like the paragon of fitness.
You're a Penthouse. But I always liked the college preview edition because that was great. Like you would open up the college football preview edition magazine and you would look at all the teams and you'd get a grasp. Sometimes you would use it to like put the names in the rosters of NCAA football back in the early 2000s or whatever. But the funniest thing about those magazines that I thought was funny was you would open it up and you'd see like a crap team that maybe won one game the previous year. And it would say, well, they have 13 returning starters. And it's like, they suck. Like they sucked. Like they won one game. They sucked. So I kept hearing about this offensive line. And it's like, oh, they were hurt last year. They got to be better. What if they're just not good? Like, what if this offensive line is just not good? What if that is Nick Caserio's weak spot? What if Nick Caserio's weak spot is the offensive line? Because here's the reality. And this is where we can kind of meet in the middle with the extremes of the offensive line. Okay? No matter how good this offensive line performs, let's be realistic, okay? Let's just be 100% realistic. No matter how good they perform, if they perform to the highest possible level that you expect this offensive line to perform, they're still going to be overpaying for their offensive line. Yep. Let's just be serious. Like even I think we need to respect that at this point, and we need to not look at this offensive line as a potential return on investment, because at the very least you're overpaying this offensive line. That just needs to be accepted. That's where it is. Now the good thing is if they play as good as they can, you have a quarterback who, even if they're playing bad, can potentially mask your poor play. So that's the good thing. You have a defense that I think is going to be good, but there is some stuff to kind of be concerned about. But the hope that this is going to look like smart investing on the offensive line, I don't find that realistic. And quite frankly, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we got to move on to Jacksonville in a sec, and then we got to kind of still live in this moment and in this season where we do think that they're still going to win the division. I'm looking at this from like a 2 or 3 year plan. They might be in really, 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 really bad shape on the offensive line when it comes to a 2 or 3 year plan, because I don't see Titus Howard I'll put it this way. I don't see Titus Howard performing at a very high level for the entire length of his contract. So I just don't find that realistic. I don't know how much longer Shaq Mason's even going to play. We'll see what happens with Juice Scruggs and Kenyon Green and Laramie Tunsil. I think Laramie Tunsil's I don't think he's going to get any better. I'll put it that way. I don't want to say he's on like some decline,
That's the scariest part about what you've just talked about is that the ceiling is way lower for the offensive line when they play their best than the expectation. Like you were never going to get value. Value's when Tristan Wirfs is on his rookie deal and he's awesome for the Buccaneers and they win the Super Bowl. That's value. You were never going to get that after you pay these guys, but you needed to get what you paid for. The scary part is that you now potentially are not going to be able to get what you paid for because the ceiling is lower for the potential of this offensive line. That is the scary thing that could be the thread through this 2024 season.
Yeah, that's the scary thing for sure is the offensive line. And the more things change, the more they stay the same. My goodness.
By the way, in case anybody was even having the thought, it's $45 million in dead cap to get rid of Tunsil and Titus Howard next year.
Come on. Now you're getting crazy.
People want these guys gone. Like it's financially it can't happen. It's impossible.
Yeah. So those are your tackles right now. Although Blake Fisher, keep an eye on him. He's on call. He's ready to go.
I would very much like to see him play. Maybe they need to put 6 tackles out there. Maybe they need to just run like 6 tackles out there. So maybe that'll fix the issue.
Just don't commit penalties. And
maybe Fisher. Maybe does Blake Fisher know where to line up? Should we ask him this week in the locker room? Do you know where to stand? By the way, Juice Scruggs parroted the same thing that Tunsil and Titus said too. I saw that quote from Aaron Wilson.
What's that?
That the NFL, that they're inconsistent with how they call it. About where they want us to line up.
That's possible. But trying to make an example is not. Like they might be I can get down with that. I can get down with there's a lack of consistency with when they call that. I can get down with that, but they were out to make an example of us. That's weird. That's what I can't really get down with. I don't really understand that. So the division. There's one other win in the division. Texans have 2. The Indianapolis Colts got a dub yesterday against the Chicago Bears. Wasn't pretty. Quite frankly, it was very ugly at times. But they did get the dub. Jacksonville looking to avoid an 0-3 start today. There's just no chance that the Texans aren't, at the very least, in this division race, no matter how bad they play at this point.
Yeah, but you don't want the AFC South to be last year's NFC South, where you're the best of a bad bunch. That's not what you want. Like,
might not have a choice.
Well, that's what you need to try to avoid in the remaining games that you have if you're the Texans. Find yourself as one of find yourself as a really good team in a bad division, not the best team in a bad division. Like that's the goal here. That was the expectation for 2024. And now, 6 days from now, we'll be sweating out probably an 0-3 Jacksonville team coming in here and seeing if they got the number.
Yeah, and that's a scary team. I mean, I saw the 4.5 seems like a lot, to be honest. Maybe it's just because we're too close to the situation and we're too close to to what happened with the Texans. 4.5 is a lot, though. It's a lot. Maybe we're just kind of. I mean, there's some middle ground. The Texans are still a really, really a good team. I don't think we're watching this one game and saying the Texans are a really good team. But I do think you can look at this game and say, all right, are these issues going to be gone? Like, I don't think you're going to commit as many penalties as you did. There'll still be some penalties. You're not going to commit as many penalties. You're not going to face Justin Jefferson every week. So you'll probably be able to figure that out. But I do think the offensive line play is going to be up and down all year. I think that's a thing. And I think that Jalen Petrie is going to be sniffed out. And that's the type of situation where one play can completely flip a game. So I do think this was the first time that we've seen an offensive coordinator just sniff him out. So those are the things that can hang around. But at the end of the day, it is still just one game. DeMeco Ryans is going to have his mindset, his mannerisms. He's not going to completely freak out. CJ Stroud is going to do the same thing. And then we'll see how the whole thing goes against Jacksonville. But I do think it's going to be very, 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 very interesting to see how they respond. And that's really what they did last year. Last year, they kept getting better and better, and they responded after performances like this. So we'll see if DeMeco's still able to get his team to respond against a Jacksonville team that off to a really, really bad start. They have potential, though, to kind of provide some headaches for this offensive line.
This is a chance to showcase the calling card of what DeMeco Ryans brings to the table. Is super disappointing performance. It's not the same as Carolina last year, but Carolina is one of the most disappointing performances because you couldn't explain why it was so bad. Like, super disappointing performance. Next week was Tampa, much better. Defense had a rough day, but the offense took care of business. That was the main issue. Like, fixed in a week. Like, this is DeMeco Ryans has fixed things that were issues earlier in the year, later in the year. Showcase that this week. Make that a hallmark, a calling card of what you are as a coach. That's the opportunity he has in front of him.
So do we consider Jalen Petrie a linebacker now? I was doing grades and I was like, do I count him as a linebacker or safety or what? What are we doing?
I would have a hard time telling you that he's a safety because he doesn't line up back there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be times where he's going to have to step up for like a couple reps or whatever and guard good receivers. So we'll see how it goes. Cody, what all is on the this side? I saw my grades this morning. Woke up to the grades.
Yep.
What was the headline? What was the kicker? The
oomph from the grades?
The oomph. No, what was the oomph from like your headline? Like if you were making a newspaper headline after this one, what would your headline be?
Texans massacred in Minnesota.
Mine was as bad as it gets, ? Because I think that's the bottom line. Like, is this as bad as it gets? I think the answer to that question is yes. I think the answer to that question is yes. I don't think we're going to see too many games where the Texans get completely blown out. So I don't see this being a trend. Hell, we've seen teams where you get your ass whooped and then you get your ass whooped and then you get your ass whooped and then. But I don't think this effort. I think this will be the worst effort that the Texans put out during this season. It's early,
yeah,
but I feel confident in saying that it will not get worse than this.
Yes, I would agree with you on that. I want to know how much better is it going to get because it feels like the ceiling is not as high as we thought it was.
I think that's the question. How much better can it get from what we've seen the first 3 weeks? I think you take the first 3 weeks. There's obviously some improvements. There's obviously some flaws. How much better does it get? I think that's a good way of saying it. I do think we found the floor.
Hopefully,
the short-term floor. The ceiling got to come down a little bit just based on what we saw in that blueprint.
Well, again, it's not just I think the ceiling is lower based off of the 3 games with the punctuation being yesterday. Like it's. So how good can it get? Let's find out. Let's see what DeMeco Ryans can do. Let's, when we don't like offensive performances, let's see if Bobby Slowick can bounce back with what he's got to do. And then the big question is the 5 guys that aren't changing, unless there's an injury, the 5 guys that aren't changing, those offensive linemen, are they going to bounce back?
Yeah, I do want to see, like, if they put on another performance like this, like, what are you going to do? Like, what do you do? Like, if the offensive line, let's say they go out against Jacksonville, again, this is an if, and they perform that way, what are you going to do?
Cry? Because you can't. I mean, what do you do to change it? You got one backup tackle on this team. It's Blake Fisher. He can't play left and right tackle.
Yep. So we'll see. We'll get into Jacksonville tomorrow. DeMeco Ryans going to speak today. So we'll hear what DeMeco has to say about.
If he's got the tinfoil hat on like Laramie.
Doubt that. Very seriously doubt that. I don't see DeMeco as a tinfoil hat guy. Stoots, appreciate you. Reaction Monday. We'll be back at it tomorrow at 9. It'll be on to Jacksonville. Reaction Mondays after Assings. Never that fun. But sometimes it just be like that. Sometimes you just get your ass kicked, and that's what happened to the Texans. Is it a short-term thing? Is it a long-term thing? It is early. There is no disputing that. Jags next week. For Cody Stoots, I'm Landry Locker. Always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon.
There you go. It's been Reaction Monday. Appreciate y'all for coming through.